Hey guys, Fox here, and today I'm going to be doing the Week 9 Power Rankings. This week had a couple games that went the exact way you'd assume, a game that went in a really ugly way, and then one that just had an insane blowout. But overall, this week had a game that ended up solidifying a playoff team and knocking one out. And we have some more close gaps, and for the first time in I think like maybe 3 or 4 weeks, we have some change in the top four. So without further ado, let's get started. Coming at number 8, no change, and it's just going to be the same. It's Pittsburgh Maulers. Let's just bring it up, the chart. I'm going to keep bringing this up and keep not trying for this team because they're the same team pretty much. They still have the lowest points scored, and they still have by far the worst point differential. This team is clearly the worst team in the league. I really don't know what to say about them. They tried to get a new quarterback. It didn't work. This team they're pretty bad. Coming in at number 7 are the Houston Gamblers. The Gamblers are staying at 7 just because I couldn't move them below the Maulers. I kind of wanted to. Overall, they really haven't been that great, especially because against this Bandits team, they got so many chances to score points, and they just didn't. They had a surprise onside kick they ended up doing nothing with. The team just did not play well. They had an interception. They didn't really do anything. They forced a couple fumbles and then ended up, just not recovering them. It's just, this team ended up just not having, they had to start Kenji Bahar because Clayton Thorson and Mark Thompson were hurt as their running back was hurt too. So I know that it does hurt, but the fact remains this team literally got beat by they got beat by the Bandits by 10. Despite the fact the Bandits played pretty much awful the whole game, and that the Gamblers had multiple opportunities to actually do something, and they didn't. They got a fumble, an interception, an onside kick, and they did nothing pretty much with all of them. The Gamblers deserve to be at number 7, but just because of how bad the Maulers are, I'm not moving them below them. But definitely the Gamblers are the 7th team in the league. Coming in at number 6, the Michigan Panthers. They kind of are here because they're the best team that's 1-7. I don't know if that's a good thing. To put it simply, this week did show a little bit of promise, I guess, because for the first time, the whole season, a quarterback played decent. Now, not saying Lynch was great in his comeback game. He did throw 2 picks, but he averaged 6 yards per attempt. He had 250. He had an 80 QBR. He wasn't terrible. And then, it's just, I can't put him that far down. Reggie Corbin's still 3rd in rushing yards in the season. And then I'm pretty sure Lance Lenore's 2nd in receiving yards. So it's not like this team is playing awful all around. So I'm gonna keep them at 6 because they're better than the other 2 teams that are 1-7, but it's not saying that much because those other 2 teams are just really bad. Coming in at number 5 are the Tampa Bay Bandits. They are definitely staying because, as I said, they played pretty bad against the Gamblers and got a win. They're playing to make the playoffs. They have to win out to make the playoffs. And their first one of those 3 games they show, Talmu has another one of those games where it didn't do anything. He went 12 for 21. He had 57 completion percentage. He had less than 100 yards, less than 5 yards per attempt. And he went 1-1 touchdown interception. I can't. I know Washington Lemons had almost as mediocre games. They had 50 and 60 yards themselves, but they combined to average 3.5. So it's not saying that much. It's just they got bailed out because they played a team without their starting quarterback and starting running back, and the Gamblers are one of the few teams that have a set starter at both positions. So the Bandits got lucked out for that, and they lucked into the win. Not trying to be one of those guys, but they really didn't play that well. Their defense played pretty solid, but at the same time, the Gamblers' offense played pretty bad. But you know what? A win's a win, I guess. They're not moving down because they have more than one win. But this team really isn't that good from this week, and they're going to have to show a lot to win next week. Coming in at number 4 is the New Orleans Breakers. They moved down mainly because one team played substantially better than them in terms of this week, and that the Breakers played terribly. The Breakers game I talked about in the week review, they played a horrid game. Both them and the Stallions had a horrible game. But I'm going to give them... they played so bad. The game had so many punts. There were 2 missed kicks. There were 3 turnovers by both teams, and the Breakers ended up losing because they missed an extra point. Kyle Sloter played like trash. 23 for 40. That's not horrid. It's not good. 251 yards. It's not bad. 0 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. That's bad. And then, Ellis was the only guy that had a decent game. He averaged 3.7 yards per carry on 11 attempts. But, oh my gosh, this team they played such a bad game. This game was ugly. Ugly. But you know what? They're still alive in the playoff race. They gotta come back next week, which I guess makes sense. 2 teams that played some of the ugliest football of the week are the Bandits and Breakers, and guess what? They have to meet for pretty much what might be the guaranteed spot in the playoffs. Coming in at number 3 is going to be the Philadelphia Stars. The Stars move up. I don't think this should be a shock. The Stars are now in the playoffs. They have the same record as the Breakers. The only difference is they played almost a perfect football game. I talked about in the week review, Case Cookus had arguably the best game of the entire season by a player. He went 20 for 26, which is just awesome. He had 250 yards. He had 100 yards on the ground. So he had a 77 completion percentage. He had 349 total yards. And he had 5 touchdowns. He had 4 in the air, 1 on the ground. That's insane. He had an outstanding game. And it's just, do you need anything else? The team did nothing wrong either. They didn't turn the ball over. They were able to score on most of their drives. They just played nearly a perfect game. So, when you put up 46 against a team in any football league like this that has, traditional rules, you had an outstanding game. That's what this team did. They had an outstanding game, and they deserve to be up here. They deserve to be above the Breakers because they were able to actually, legitimately play a great game and win. So, yeah. The Generals are number 2. I really want to put this team at 1, but I said I can't until the Stallions lose. But the Generals are playing so well. They haven't lost since the opener. DeAndre is still hurt, and it doesn't matter. The team still wins. Luis went 18 of 24, 75 completion percentage, 220 yards. That's literally over 9 yards an attempt. He had a touchdown, no interceptions, and then running the ball. Oh my gosh. They had 2 running backs average 5 yards carry. Think about that. Their 2 running backs, Victor and Williams, had over 5 yards a carry. And Darius Victor had 3 touchdowns along with that. What really can't this team do? Kevontae Turpin literally leads the league in receiving yards. They have the rushing yards leader and the receiving yard leader. It's just that's really all that needs to be said. This team literally just is a unit. They are just built to run the football, and when they need to, they throw these random passes that just ends up going for 20 yards, and it's a great offense, and genuinely for when the playoffs start, this is the team I would probably pick to win it. Number 1 are the Stallions. They're undefeated, and that's literally the only reason they're here. If you were just looking at this week, the Stallions, and you didn't know anything about any other week, the Stallions might legitimately be 3rd or 4th and the worst team. They played so bad. But at the end of the day, they did get the job done. They did win. It's hard to look at this team and be I'm really ready for this team to win. I I just can't. This team just, dude, they barely beat a team that plays so bad. It's just, I mean, think about it. They're now second in total points scored. Philadelphia's become the first team with 200. That should have been Birmingham. Point differential, they're still winning, but I don't know. They played a really bad game, but they won. They're undefeated, and I can't really say I'm going to move them down, despite the fact they're undefeated. They're at 1, but it's just barely. So that is this week's power rankings. As of right now, it's definitely one of those where it's pretty obvious to say what teams are the bottom, what teams are the top. And it's mainly just the middle that are getting changed around. But week 9 has definitely some changing games. You can see a couple upsets between Michigan and the Gamblers beating the Generals and Stallions, which would be massive for the power rankings. And then the main game is the Bandits versus Breakers, which might be the most important game of the regular season. Basically, if the Breakers win that game, they're in the playoffs. If Tampa wins, they just have to win in week 10, and they're in. So overall, it's a pretty cool week. We'll get to see what happens. So without further ado, this has been ZomFox. If you enjoy this content, want to be notified as soon as I upload any videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell.